she's a professor. We were taking, it was actually really similar to your class last semester, you know, with the grad research methods. It was called the Introduction to Communication Theories.
We have actually changed the name.
Yeah, and so it was pretty much the same class, almost the same book. And,
okay.
Yeah, and we got to Aristotle's rhetoric, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, I couldn't get enough of it. She's like, have you heard of ISU? And I was like, I had not. I'm gonna get you in contact with Nancy. And I was like, okay. And Nancy and I had like one Zoom meeting, and it was over. I was like, okay, I guess we're going to put that over.
Okay, so we're live on Zoom, and I've also started recording on YouTube.
Is the mask supposed to be on now?
Sorry?
The mask on the owl. They can't block it. Yeah, it's blocking. I don't think they can see.
On the owl itself.
Oh my gosh. Who did that? Oh, okay.
Oh, but it's not fixed. It's such a, that's interesting.
The fact is, today we are trying to punish them.
Yeah, maybe. I'll just take to Zoom. So we're okay.
I saw Corey last night.
Okay, just give me a second here.
This is kind of random, but maybe you guys know if we return the book to the bookstore, and start the refinance report, we wouldn't need like our debit card.
And she goes straight on back to your card.
You think so?
Yeah.
So I don't need to bring my debit card in.
Your receipt, if you have it.
What?
Your receipt.
Yeah, I brought that and I was, because I was just gonna go after the classes over and I was like, I wonder if I need my.
They might say like, you want this returned to debit card ending in 424.
Yeah, whatever. Mhm. Okay.
I'm just at 300.
That's, I knew what you meant.
I just made one up. I'm pretty proud of myself.
So you're hiding your information.
Okay, very welcome to all of you here on Zoom and in the classroom. I'm very happy to see you here. I hope you're having a good first week of classes. Not too busy? Are you able to hear me on Zoom? Okay. All right, great. So I'm on my Moodle page here where I have posted some stuff already for today's lecture and also for our next week's lecture. So I have a question. Did you all get your textbook? All right. Okay, you're still, can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
I'm still waiting for financial aid. So as soon as that comes in, I'll get the textbook. I have it ready. I just can't get it yet.
Okay, so what I've done here is when you look at the module for this week and next week. So remember on Monday, we're not meeting because of MLK Day. And we will only have Wednesday lecture and you need to read chapter 2. So I got my book only today, my actual hard copy. So I have scanned chapter 1 and chapter 2. So I'm hoping that by the end of second week, you will have your book. Does it sound good? So it's for everyone. If you're still waiting for your book, maybe you ordered it from some online platform and it's due to come next week or something. I scanned those chapters so that you have these readings with you. And I only did that in the morning today. So we are going to start with our chapter 1, which is Introduction to Research. I have posted my PowerPoint slides on Moodle. I'm using these slides. I also have uploaded a research paper example that I'll show you today. All right. So I'm going to take you to my slides. Give me a thumbs up when you are able to see these. Are you able to see my slides? On Zoom? No. Okay, so I'll stop share and I'm going to go back. Now? All right, great. Are you guys okay with this screen? Right? All right. So we're going to start with our basic question today. What is research? Some of you may be familiar with the process of research. Some of you may not be. Is there anyone here who has ever read a research paper, like a proper peer-reviewed research paper? You have, of course. I made you read some. We always stick to a certain format when we write research, when we are conducting research. There is a certain method to this madness. We always are interested to find an answer to a question, and then we devise certain steps that will help us guide to answer that particular question. So research is a process of finding the answer to something that you are interested in knowing. It can be anything. We have to remember a few words here. The process has to be scientific. There has to be some logic to what you're doing. There has to be a system of how you're doing things. Now, as students of media and communication, what are the kind of questions that you're seeking an answer for? What is it about media or communication or mediated communication that you are interested in? You first have to think about a broad research question. I'll show you some examples here today of how to look at media artifacts from a researcher's point of view. What I want you to do in this class is to start looking at media messages or messages in general, even if they're not mediated communication, as researchers. How can I know more about something? What is this message doing? The kind of research questions we are very concerned about as media and communication scholars is human behavior. People. This is how we are different from natural sciences, for example, physics or chemistry. Because our primary emphasis is understanding, for example, media consumers. For example, producers of media. For example, communication processes. So we're very concerned with people and how people communicate. Some people like to argue whether communication research or media research can be termed as an exact science, whether it is indeed a scientific process, because we are so concerned with how humans communicate. Because a human being is influenced by so many factors. It's not just a media message alone. So there are different schools of thoughts here. Whether we can replicate the kind of science that natural science does, whether we are like physics or chemistry, where we have total control over research process, or whether we are different. In this class, our understanding of media and communication research is that it is a scientific process. We can systematically understand how people behave when they're exposed to a certain kind of media, message, or communication process. So remember the words scientific inquiry, remember the word logic, remember the word systematic process in this class as we learn about communication research. let's watch something. I'll stop share. I'll take you to this page.
You know, you need to click the two boxes at the bottom to share sound.
Okay, I have to go back, right?
Yep.
Share screen, share sound, right?
Yeah, and if you actually click the optimize share screen for video clip too, it helps out with buffering a lot.
Okay. Where did Zoomers go? Do they disappear in this process?
Yeah.
Okay, now I need to see them. Let's do this, right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen here? With a small video clip. Okay, so I'm going to play a video here. I don't want you to bring in your ideologies or biases as we watch this, because remember, it is a scientific process. We are only going to watch this 30-second clip as researchers. Let's call each and every one here in this classroom as a researcher. What can you answer about human behavior?
Seattle's pledge to defund its police department by 50%, even including a proposal to remove 911 dispatchers from police control.
Joe Biden said he's absolutely on board with defunding the police. Listen closely.
Yes, absolutely.
Hello, you've reached 911. I'm sorry that there is no one here to answer your emergency call, but leave a message and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Where crime will rise significantly.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
I'm stop sharing here. I hope all of you got to see this 30-second clip. Like I told you, don't bring in your ideologies or biases here, but if this is a message that you want to examine as a researcher, what kind of questions can you answer? What are the questions that come to your mind?
What emotion is trying to be portrayed or invoked through this?
So you want to, let's break this down because this is very interesting. Can you repeat it? Maybe not exactly the same words, and be a little louder.
Okay, what emotion is the distributor or creator trying to invoke in the audience?
Audience. So one is audience,
Correct.
which simply means, let's go back to our previous slide, which simply means human behavior. So as a researcher, you want to understand the human behavior via this message. The secondary layer is emotion, right? So second thing that you want to, because you feel that people will emote. The third layer in this message is fear. So what you're saying here is, as a researcher, if I need to break this down, is three things at the very basic level, right?
Yes.
So if we have to look at this from a researcher's perspective, you can design a study which examines the human behavior, especially the emotions evoked by exposure to a certain kind of message, right? What can you do in that study? So what you're doing here is you have a broad research question, right? What can you do? What if I project this video, ask people to come in this room and ask them, then make them answer a few questions? I have a study, right? So this is what you mean by the scientific process of measuring human behavior. But it must begin with a broad research question. So whenever you're looking at ads, whenever you're looking at videos, try to think of these as potential stimulus for your research studies, right? This is one way of thinking about ideas. You shared one idea for research. A lot is going on. What else can you know? This is one aspect, right? One side of the story. That's human behavior.
Why would they use this type of response, or this type of why would they use this type of video?
Who is they?
The producer of the video or the person who supports the video.
Yeah, right. So now you are changing the angle of research. One was strictly from the audience perspective. The other is from the producer perspective. Why did they do what they did, right? For example, why did they choose fear appeal? Why did they choose fear appeal? There can be so many things you can do. Why fear? Which means if you have to find an answer to that, you need a very different kind of study. Your human participants are going to be different. They are going to be the producers of that show. Right? Okay. What else can you do with this? So we've already found two different angles. You can build on a study, for example, you can look at 10 similar kind of videos and go to 10 different producers and have a study based on responses from 10 different producers. That's a different study. You can conduct a study where the audience reaction is measured. That's a different study. What else can you do? And you can do more.
You can look at the cultural context surrounding the message.
Cultural context surrounding the message.
Yes, because the whole ad is about defunding police.
Yeah.
And it then gives consequences of that. So you could maybe do a study, find another ad that has maybe a contradicting feel or tone to it, show both people, see which one resonates more, and then maybe give them facts about what's actually going to happen. If defund police happens, you can rewatch it, see if their feelings change.
Yeah, but you're still in that audience realm of things.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So it's a different kind of questions you'll ask, but you're still going to ask people who watch it. Maybe you'll compare. You make one group watch something, you make another group watch something, and then you kind of compare their thoughts on a particular topic, which is police defunding in this case. It can be anything, right? But you're still within that audience reaction thing. What do you think about the video itself? How many of you liked it? Now, I told you no biases. As if you're from Moon.
It was very effective in its message. I didn't necessarily like it, but what it put forth was very straightforward and effective.
It had a very simple idea, right?
It looked good. The production value of it, it wasn't shot on a cell phone. It had an actor in it. It had cuts. It had some color correction. It was dark and moody for a reason.
For a reason. Hold on to that part.
Okay.
What about the protagonist?
This old lady. People who watch commercials usually identify if they see someone similar to themselves. It's obviously targeting an elderly audience.
What if I change the protagonist?
To an audience with the other more like
What it means is that you forget about the audience and you forget about the producers. There's something with the message itself that we can study. So you were saying for a reason, right?
Yes.
Which means that if I change certain things in that ad, the emotions will be different, right? We can do two things here. One is same message, different protagonist, look at responses. That's audience centric. But I look at the campaign itself and look at the content in different videos, for example. I can look at the thread here. what is going on. Forget about the audience. So what it means is, depending upon your research interest, you can do a lot in communication and media studies. You can study the message itself, or you can study the reactions to that message. And both kind of research questions are valid. What we need to keep in mind is that our study design, how we conduct our research, will completely change if we change our research question, even if the material is same. I'm taking you back to my slides here, and I'll come back to that point again. Okay. So as students in this class, in this research class, I want you to look at any kind of message. It can be interpersonal, it can be mediated, it can be technology, it can be legacy. Try to look at these things from a researcher point of view. A simple way to start in this class is, if you read material from a certain website every day, for example, that's how you start your day. If you go on a certain platform every day, that's a part of your routine. Why do you do that? That's a good research question to ask. Why do people consume media in the way that they do? Why did you like a certain film? Why did you like a certain character? Why did you like a certain ad? When you start asking these questions, you will start finding your research interests. And that is what I want you to do. You can be interested from the reception side of the message. You can also be interested in the message itself. All you need is a scientific inquiry. And then when you have a research question, you start thinking about, what is the systematic manner of finding an answer to what I am seeking? In that video clip that I showed you, does the protagonist matter? Does her gender matter? Age matter? Race matter? Does that setting matter? Time of the day matter? What if I change it? Should I design a study around that? Maybe. Is there a difference I find? Maybe. So things like that. What do you want to know? And how can you find an answer to what you want to know? This class is all about that. There are 4 standards of research that will help you understand what we mean by scientific inquiry. Why is this a science? Why is this not an opinion-based stuff? There are 4 things which we will study, come back to, remember always in this class: empirical, systematic, intersubjectivity, subjective and replicable, and cyclical and self-correcting. These are 4 main points. What do we mean by empirical? To understand this word, always remember the word data-driven studies. So empirical means that the observation that you do is based on a standardized measurement. In simple words, it is not simply based on your opinion, and the processes that you have used are standardized. You have measures. You measure things in a scientific way, and those processes can be replicable. So when we say, oh, there is just anecdotal data, there is no empirical evidence, it basically means that we don't have the data. Nobody gathered the data around on that topic in a scientific manner so that we can be very sure of our results. So whenever you read this word, it simply means it's not anecdotal. So if I make you watch something like a video here, or maybe an ad or something, and I ask for your opinion, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? That's not empirical. If I develop a measure, like a questionnaire, and I'm asking the same questions from everyone who is exposed to the same message, then I can say my results are based on empirical data. So sometimes in newspaper, when we are writing, and I have journalism background, we gather a lot of anecdotal data because we don't have the time and the means to conduct scientific research. But scientific studies are built on that. The scientific process of knowing something is different from anecdotal process. And that's something that we have to remember, that this class is about empirical evidence. Are you saying this because it's your opinion? Or are you saying this because you conducted research? A very simple way of understanding is, for example, if I want to know a very basic question, I really can't build a study around it, but if I want to say, how many people like the video that I showed you? Then an empirical study would be, I ask the same question. And then I do some data analyses, and then I come up with an answer, and I say 70% of students in my class liked this video. That is empirical evidence, right? So how do you measure people's likes? How do you measure their dislike? How do you measure fear, right? What should I ask? Should I watch their reactions? I can do that. Should I ask them, are you scared? What should I do? How should I measure happiness? So this process of understanding human behavior by using empirical scientific process can become extremely complex, because we have to find a way to measure human behavior accurately over and over a period of time, right? So we will get to that process later on, because that's where most of the complexities of social science research lie. How do you measure things? But unless you measure things in a scientific manner, you cannot produce empirical data. Systematic. Whatever we do, whenever we are talking in terms of research in social science in general and media and studies in particular, is what did we follow a systematic process? Whether we gathered data in a systematic process, whether we planned our study in a systematic process, and whether everything is replicable. Should we measure what we need to measure so that the results are similar in each study? A very simple thing. If I have to compare two groups of people, let's say two different groups who watch the same video, at the bare minimum, I need to keep the same stimulus. I need to keep the same video. That's a part of my planning, right? So if I'm comparing two groups, they should be similar sized. That can be a part of the planning. I should not have one group with 10 people, the other group with 300 people. So that's not systematic. That's a problem with my planning. Other things that can result in planning errors can be, if I have one group which is all women and I have another group which is all men, and it's not planned. I'm not studying gender differences, but my participants are not distributed equally. So when you are designing studies, you need to make sure that you are following the same systematic planning when you're designing your study, right? So keep things same so that these are replicable. Intersubjective and replicable. This is extremely important to remember, not only in this class, but in general, that no single study is going to provide all the answers. So in research, we think about a study as one small, tiny contribution in the bigger research process. So we always describe the research process as a collective process, collective knowledge building. Always find your focus. Always be very clear about how you are contributing in that vast knowledge wolf on the subject. Now, for example, we watched that video. We've already thought about 3 or 4 different studies that we can do. These are separate studies. Each and every study is going to give you an answer to only a certain set of questions. It is extremely important for you to understand and remember when you design a study in this class, it's not going to answer each and every question that's out there on that topic. But you need to make a start. So think of research as a collective process. So typically we have research groups that work on a particular topic. For example, political awareness is big, misinformation is very big these days. Social media is another group. And they always think about research in terms of a series of studies. Okay, I can do so much here in one study, and then I can take this idea forward and do something more here, do something more here, do something more here. So think of research as taking the knowledge forward, one study at a time. What it means is that you must always report your research questions very clearly, and you must always very clearly mention how did you conduct your study, who were the participants in that study, what are the results of your specific study, what can we do in the future. So when I show you an example of a research paper, and then you can see how these steps are actually followed in a study. In our research designs, when we do research, our focus is mainly on sharing, not hiding, so that the process of research can move forward. What if Lydia writes a paper? I'm very interested in her study. She's not available on campus. You've moved to another country. I want to use those same methods. And I want to test your theory again. I want to test these results again on a different population. So you must provide me everything. The questions that you asked, how many people were there? How did you conduct it? What stimulus video did you use, etc., etc. So that even in your absence, I can replicate and keep the research process going on. And then research is cyclical and self-correcting. How many of you have done a lit review section ever? I know. Lit review, okay. How many of you liked it? It was a necessary evil. Any other thoughts? What is a research? What is a lit review? Anyone? Any thoughts? Kylie, I saw your hand go up.
For me, it makes it easier to get into what you're trying to say in the rest of your paper because it gives you the background. So I think they're really important because then you don't have to necessarily go super in-depth with explanation within your paper. You can just put the results in, and people, if they don't understand a specific term, they can go back up there and kind of figure out what it is they need to do or know.
Yeah, I like the word that you use, background. So that's what essentially research lit review is. You will have to do a lit review for the paper that you write in this class, so it's important that you understand that lit review is important in the scientific process. Like Logan, you said it's a necessary evil, right? Yeah. But there's a reason why we do it. Because whenever you're doing a study, you always want to make a contribution. Even when you design your student project, you will do a literature review, and you will write a convincing sentence or two as to why you should be doing this study. What is new about it? Unless you know yourself what is the new thing that you can contribute, you are not taking the research process forward. So we can stagnate in our knowledge building process if we don't understand what has been done already. And this falls in our discussion of it being cyclical and self-correcting. So lit review always ensure that the cycle of research continues. If you know what has already been done, we love to use the word gaps in literature when we write papers. So you know what has been done, you identify what has not been done, and you are trying to bridge that gap in the literature so that the cycle of research continues. So it's always extremely important that we keep ourselves informed as to what is going on by reading research on our topic. By reading research that is already published, especially the latest ones, so that we are contributing in that cycle of finding new. For student projects, I always encourage you to think locally and think regionally. For example, if there's some phenomenon that's going on, you can conduct a study here, and you want to see whether we also do the same things that, let's say, people on the East Coast are doing. That's a new thing. If we don't have data for ISU and you bring that data for ISU, that's a contribution. If something happened in the Midwest, for example, in Kansas, something happened on campus, you want to see whether the same thing happens here as well. Do students here on campus feel the same way about something? You have a new contribution there. You have a study there. So always think about regional, smaller stuff. That's one way of knowledge building. At the student level, it's extremely hard sometimes to build theoretical work, but it's always a good idea to think locally in our own settings and see if certain theories hold good for our population groups. So keep that in mind as you think about research ideas. You can do broader work, or you can narrow it down to our population group and see if that is replicated as well. But you must be able to bring some new contribution. So the questions that you should be asking is, what do we already know about it? What do we already know about this research problem? Have people already studied it? Do I have a new angle here that I can look? Maybe they looked at 3 things, but they forgot about the 4th thing. Maybe I can look at the 4th thing there. You can only know that when you read published research in a topic, on a topic that you are interested in. So I have an extended abstract assignment. Basically, the focus of that assignment is to make you read on a topic that you are interested in. Unless you know what's going on, unless you know what's happening, you cannot think about a research question. Okay, I'll show you. I'm going out of this. I'll share with you an example of a research paper of how these things look. All right. So it's on Moodle. It's an example of a quantitative paper. Are you able to see this PDF? Yeah, okay, good. All right, so this is the abstract. We will come to this later on. This is a brief introduction, but this is the lit review section. So you clearly mark these areas in your paper that this is the lit review section. Look how detailed this is. So you really have to cover a lot of territory in the sense that on any topic, there's tons of research, and you should be able to synthesize that and bring the key points. You then state your hypotheses or research questions. So you then state what is going to be new. on this topic. So what you've done is you've described what we already know. And then you come to the point that, okay, this is what I'm going to do in this study because we don't know about A, B, C things here. And then you state your hypotheses and your research questions. Once you know that you want to find these answers, then you start thinking about people. Who will be the people whom I'm going to study? Am I going to make them watch something? That's your stimulus. And what is my design? How am I going to, what are my procedures? So before you design a study, get to that part of thinking about who will be the people who will be a part of my study. You have to cover a lot of territory in terms of why are we doing what we're doing? And then you present your results. So this is one of my latest papers, and this is a quant paper. It's a heavy quant paper. So I wanted to show you what scientific research papers will look like. I'm back to my slides here. I'll go back. So in this class, we're going to follow these steps in the research process. So the first thing that I want all of you to focus on is, of course, is what is the research problem that you want to tackle? What is it that interests you? What do you want to know? I'm not using the word research question here. That's different. That comes after scanning the literature. I'm only concerned with the research problem here. So think about a broad interest of yours. On Wednesday, I'll assign your first homework, which is about the research problem. So think about what interests you. If you need some help, send me an email. Then you determine the focus of your paper. Once you have a broad area of interest, then you narrow it down to the focus of your particular paper. And how would you do that? You will scan the literature. Then you will tell me, I found so much on this topic, but this hasn't been done. And then you pose your research questions or your hypotheses. Then you will go in details about how do you want to measure what you want to measure? Where are you going to get participants from? How are you going to sample people? Then how will you collect data, analyze data, and write your results and report? So this is your final paper. For undergraduates, you don't have to go in the field and collect data, but you have to do all the other steps. You must have your measures, you must have your definitions of concepts, you must have your research questions and hypotheses, and also you must be able to tell me where are you going to get these people and how are you going to gather data. For the grad students in this class, you have to complete all the steps, which is actually going in the field, collecting data, analyzing your results, and writing a report based on those results. So for next week, I want you to think about your research problem. What is it that you want to do? I just showed you one example today, but you can look at media from any different angle, and you can kind of start looking at the research problem. I have a couple other examples here that I wanted to show you. Okay. Anyway, so I had a few other examples of still ads, and I can come back to those and I can show those to you. I watched this ad, which I thought was very different. I'm taking you to another video here, so just give me a second. Okay. Share. This is another example of an ad.
He took the train 4 hours every day so he could have breakfast with his boys in the morning and tuck them in at night. People in Washington didn't get why Joe Biden would travel all that way. But in neighborhoods all over this country, there's no distance parents won't go for their kids. Never underestimate the power of family or the sacrifices people will make for their children. That love, that hope, that determination, that's what fuels the American dream. It's why you stay up paying bills, sign up for that extra shift, worry about schools and healthcare. When Joe Biden traveled those 4 hours, he wasn't just going home for his kids. He was going to work for them too, just like he will for yours.
A very different kind of ad, and you can find very, very different kind of answers. You can compare the two videos that we looked at. Yeah, you can ask very different kind of questions for this particular video. You can compare the two videos, and you can look at different appeals. How many students are here from advertising focus, PR, corporate image? Okay, yeah. So start looking at, there's one way of starting this class is that you start looking at media messages from your emphasis area and see if that makes sense. It's not that I want you to think about or stay within your emphasis area, but that will be helpful. For example, journalism students, you can think about ways of how people interact with news. Can you do something there? Can you understand user behavior if you change tone in a news copy? Do people react differently to messages with pictures, with videos, or without pictures or without videos? So there can be a lot of research questions in your own emphasis area. So start, see if something interests you, and then you branch out if you want to do something completely different. And I'm fine with that. For the grad students, you have your two here, Logan and Ryan. Typically, the grad students in this class, they have tried to find something that will be useful towards their grad paper. You don't have to do it, but you can do it. You can search for your grad paper topic by using this class as a starting point. If you are doing something, you know a topic, you already have an advisor and you know a topic, try to find something within that and see if that helps. You don't have to. You can do something completely different. But this class is going to be concerned with human participants, survey research. So think about a topic that interests you that entails how you measure people's reactions, their likes, dislikes, the persuasive content, for example. How do people engage with something in the realm of communication and media? And for grad students, again, if you have a topic in mind which you think can be useful after the semester as well, it would be a great idea to talk to your advisor and see if something can be converted, because you will be going in the field and gathering data. So we will need to have certain permissions if you want to convert the data in this class into your project. So we need IRB permission for that. I'll talk more on that. But it's a good way of thinking about your graduate degree paper while you think about a topic here, and talk to your advisor if you think something more can be done. For undergraduate students here, think about your emphasis areas and think if you can pull something out from there, or you can branch out and try something new. Okay? Any questions for me? I will meet you again on Wednesday. And Wednesday is when I will discuss your homework 1, which is about your research idea for this class. And there will be points for that. I'll let you go early today, and we will come back for chapter 2 and our further discussions on the research process. Okay, any questions? All right, so I'll end the meeting.